Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tricked Before. This time, the child. Yeah, the child. What could that mean? There's been a lot of children in Star Trek lore, but this is the child. Speaking of children, you know Meg, you know Chris, you know Stewie. You know where I'm going. Patreon.com/IBD. Great way to support the network. Support IBD, support the mothership, support all the other programs and things we do on this network, like this very show you are listening to now, which I know you know and love. Anyway, speaking of where I was going with that was, if you're a Patreon member, you can listen to our special episode talking about the Family Guy episode where Stewie, I'm not going to say kidnap because that gives it a pejorative sense, but he gathers the cast of Star Trek The Next Generation to hilarious ends. And I when I say hilarious, that sounds pejorative too. It's hilarious. Get it? Make your basic contribution Patreon. And now listen to us talk about the child on It's All Been Trekked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
And Keith.
Jimmy Jerome. And we are still coming at you from quarantine. However, we got a new season here for you. We're in season 2 of The Next Generation.
Wow.
That's exciting.
It is.
Yep.
We're going to be recording lots of episodes while we're in quarantine, building that backlog back up. So,
Yes, we are.
I hope this audio is acceptable to you, and if not, I'm sorry. Today, we're talking the season premiere, which is called The Child. First impressions, gentlemen.
I enjoyed it. And not to get too far ahead, but I guess I am going to. I have a feeling that Steven enjoyed this one a lot more than the next episode.
You are correct on both counts.
But we haven't watched the next episode yet.
Oh, that's right. Never mind. I think you're going to be correct. I have a hunch. I thought this one was good too. And, it felt like they had that very quick, a lot of exposition off the top, like new engineer, new doctor and all that. And so it felt like, hey, this is the beginning of season 2, which,
It was.
Yeah. Amok Time was a great season 2 starter for TOS, and I guess that has its own. It feels different than season 1 for sure. So you could feel some things, and we'll get into all those differences and feelings as we go along. But yeah, I did enjoy this episode, even though hearing the child as the title, I was skeptical. But yeah, took a lot of notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we saw the title last week, I remember remembering Troi and the baby and going, why? I don't really care for that plot. But the rest of the episode is like so darn good that I'm just like, oh, okay, here we go. Season 2, Next Gen, you're finding your legs. I like it. And I agree, I'll expound upon it more here in a second, but I agree, it definitely felt like they were starting a new season. And this felt like a season premiere to reintroduce us to everybody and everything, and also kind of fill in what had changed since they left us.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like immediately, I felt like a shift in the tone and the feel of everything.
Yeah.
And it was starting to feel a lot more like the modern version, quote unquote, modern version of that series or, Next Gen that I would remember.
Yes. Agreed. I mean, yeah, they clearly are more settled into their roles. And by now, a lot of the writers, they had huge behind-the-scenes drama, and we won't get into it too much right now, but a lot of the writers that were in Season 1 were gone by the time Season 2 started, and it kind of got taken over by a different group of people. But Gene was still around, and it was still pretty messy, and by the end of Season 2, all of those guys were gone, and we got a whole nother batch of people for Season 3.
Wow.
So there's still more shakeup to come, but every time you talk about Next Gen, and I always think, the first 2 seasons were pretty messy. But honestly, I'm a fan of how it's starting and excited to keep going. At the very beginning of the episode, and I've got like 6 notes here about why it felt like a season opener. I mean, we got the Excelsior class ship and the Excelsior music theme from the films, which I thought was cool.
Yeah.
And then we get to see the shuttle bay. We get to see... the theme song is down a couple actors, unfortunately. We lost Dr. Crusher, we lost Natasha Yar, who?
Yeah.
Beat you to it. And we didn't replace either one of them. So the cast already is like slimmed down a little bit, even though we have 2 new major reoccurring characters to replace them. Then we get to the bridge, and we get to see Worf wearing yellow. But he has not been promoted. I mean, he's security chief. But if you look at the pips on his collar, he's still lieutenant junior grade. He just changed colors. Whereas Geordie LaForge, chief engineer, also in yellow, has a new pip. So he is a full lieutenant now. And then we also must mention Wesley at the con has a new uniform and silver badge, which was pretty cool. It felt to me like he wasn't a kid as it started. He definitely felt older and more mature.
Did you say Wesley?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
And then the last thing I want to mention before we can break down any one of these points is Rikers Beard. Now we finally have the Rikers.
Oh, yeah.
That was my second note, actually. It's just I'd forgotten that he was going to have a beard suddenly. And it's like, oh, yeah.
And he keeps it forever now, except that one film. He shaved in one of the films.
Something about his delivery even seemed to have matured. But again, that's just everyone feels, smoother as far as their acting in the roles. So.
Did Freaks grow that just because he wanted to, or was that something that was discussed?
I am not sure.
Huh.
I mean, I love the beard. I think it suits him, and I am always disappointed when he's clean-shaven, honestly.
Yeah.
That feels like a thing that should have come up at a convention at some point.
I mean, and the swagger, man. Like, he's in, I think it's Picard's office, and he's sitting on the chair, and he gets up to go, and he doesn't even bother to walk around the chair. He just swings his leg over it. Like, it's a big, normal height chair. And I was just like, oh my God, Riker. I mean, that's what he does. And I love Commander Riker, don't get me wrong, but I'm just like, oh, come on, dude.
I do want to start doing that sometime, or maybe just one night every once in a while, I'll just start sitting everywhere like I'm Riker, turning chairs around, swinging my leg over.
I mean, it's the Kirk. He's so Kirk.
Yeah.
And we see it in those moments. But also, he's his own thing.
I thought that shuttle looked very cute. It looked different to me. I don't know if it was just the angle it was shot at, but it looked like a cute little baby shuttle. Maybe
it looked different to me too. I'm not sure.
Yeah, the shuttle bay doors are open, but everyone's walking around breathing okay. So is it just like there's still enough oxygen, or there's some kind of thing that keeps the oxygen inside and doesn't suck it all out?
I mean, I've seen other. Yeah, I was going to say. Yeah, I've seen other sci-fi shows do that sort of thing where they make it more visible that that's happening.
Yeah, we'll see the shuttles go through the force field, I'm pretty sure, at some point in Next Gen.
That's and I actually backed it up a couple times to watch it, and there is like a blue sheen going on there. So that was my other guess, was that's what's going on there, which I think Star Wars does too, but they have those big giant bays. They're even bigger and bigger, but I love that shot.
Say it was actually a mistake, and all of their extras died during the scene. Yeah.
I love that shot, though. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah.
I always love seeing the shuttle bay.
Yeah, I think they just wanted to show us some different things. I mean, the other things we'll get to is we've got, like I said, 2 major reoccurring characters join the cast, and we got the new set, 10 Forward, which is awesome and welcome, and excited to see more with 10 Forward as time goes on.
I had forgotten that's what that was, but I was like, I think that's what that is they're talking about.
Let's talk about the new people. What do you think of Dr. Pulaski in this episode only? Because there's so much Pulaski in the next episode to talk about that we haven't watched yet. If you can separate that and remember what this episode.
I have a lot of different notes on her, if I can find them all. First of all, I love Diana Muldaur. We know that from TOS. Both of her appearances, she was great. Return to Tomorrow was terrible, but Is There in Truth No Beauty? I'll stand for that forever. But her hair in this is so 80s and so terrible. But she's great, and her voice is so great. But I guess this is the fashion part of her appearance. But yeah, sure, her hair is terrible. And I also noticed, I think they did in both episodes, maybe they do it all season, they call it a special appearance by Diana Muldaur.
Yes.
Which I thought was cool.
Yeah, they never do make her a lead character. She's special appearance all season.
And I think my other note was I thought she brought the same kind of professionalism and I know what I'm doing and I'm cutting to the chase that Crusher does. But I thought she also brought a different energy, a new energy. And I think that...
Is it a new energy or an old energy?
A little both. I thought that the fact that she was curious about things opened up that door because she doesn't really know Data. All those scenes I really liked because she was asking smart questions. It wasn't like somebody who just got to the Enterprise and you had to tell them everything. Or, when they meet an alien or whatever, or somebody who's a visitor, it was somebody who's a smart person, knows their way around a starship, but doesn't know the people. So I think those interactions were really cool. So far, I love Pulaski.
She's McCoy. She's just Dr. McCoy, and instead of picking on Spock, she picks on Data. It's the same dynamic, and I feel like, and she's got a special uniform, like Crusher had, like McCoy had. They all have their own special. But I feel like they just decided that, you know what the Next Generation's missing? That Spock-McCoy energy. Let's bring in Pulaski and pair her with Data to do that. And I believe she continues that all season.
That's not a bad, but I think it's not as mean or as racist as McCoy could be.
I thought it was super mean and racist. I thought it was very mean-spirited. She kept calling him an it and not addressing him and everything, and saying, I'm used to working with, things that are alive. Oh, I'm sorry, you are alive. I forgot. And just, it was very...
Maybe you're right, man. Maybe she is a machinist.
She is.
Yeah. I enjoy it. And obviously I was enjoying it so much I ignored the racism, which I feel bad about now. But I'll keep an eye on. I did enjoy. I know we're sprinkling in fashion. I did not like her uniform. I mean, Crusher's is awesome. I didn't really like it. I didn't feel like it was flattering for her, but we'll see. I'll keep an eye on it. I guess I didn't like any of Muldar's, but she can't do better than her sensory coat she had in. Is There in Truth No Beauty? So maybe again, I'm just sticking to my nostalgic memories. But I did like Diana Muldaur in it, and I look forward to the future episodes. So
if we're talking fashion, did you? The Worf and Geordi uniform changes. Obviously, we already mentioned.
Yeah, and I actually like Wesley's. I like his uniform.
The gray with the silver.
I like the top, the uniform. I like the way it looked. It looked warm, which. Maybe too warm for him, but that's his choice. I'm sure they keep it the temperature nice regulated there. But I thought I didn't like the way it tucked into his pants, but that's just a personal preference. But otherwise, I did like the top. I like the way it was braided's not the right word, but I like the shoulders and everything. I like the way that looked. That was a good look for him.
Sorry, Keith, we lost you. We were talking about Pulaski and how she was basically McCoy treating Data the way that McCoy always treated Spock.
Yeah, and I missed all the racism. I was enjoying her so much. So I'm going to have to pay attention to all her or racism or machinism or whatever it is.
It'll be satisfying to see her when she witnesses Super Data in action at some point. If that ever happens.
The other person that got a new uniform was Troi. What do you think of Troy's purple outfit this episode?
I guess it depends on which one. No, all right. And so what was the maternity outfit? That was...
I was talking about the main uniform.
Yeah. She still looks great.
I thought she looked better.
Yeah.
I liked this outfit.
Yeah.
I take you've moved past the beginning.
Yes.
One thing I noted about Beard Riker is that he's dressed for the quarantine now. He has his quarantine beard. One of the main backdrops of the episode, which I thought was interesting, is a plague that they're dealing with. And
coincidence.
I noted one thing that's going to be a ding against Wesley for me in this episode, and that was that he was violating a lot of personal space, especially in the turbo lift. So he was not practicing the 6-foot rule at all with Picard.
I thought the turbo lift scene, I don't think I made a note, but maybe I did. I really enjoyed I thought the way they just lived in that and just let it breathe, just that awkwardness.
It was so awkward.
It was great, and I thought...
So awkward. Picard and Wesley in the turbo lift, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. And I thought, are they trying to do that Picard doesn't talk to kids? But I'm like, no, Wesley's not a kid anymore. It was just more of your mom's not here and all that stuff. And
he is still a kid. He's still a minor.
Fair.
They just all of a sudden are treating him like he's an adult because he's had adult responsibility. Yes. And they let him make a very adult decision to stay on the ship without his mom, which we'll get to more at the... I want to save some of that for the end of the episode, but...
I could see that for the turbo lift. I could see it going either way, really. But I think my thought of it when he was exiting that scene is it really was about Picard treating him more like an adult rather than trying to hold his hand through what was going on there.
Sure.
It's sort of like, yep, this is what happens. These are the things that happen when you're, in this service. So
what do we think of our other new major reoccurring character who won't be in every episode like Pulaski is this season, but she's in like 30-some episodes over the series?
Guinan?
Yes.
I think it was a good introduction to her. I liked the advice that she gave Wesley.
Mm-hmm. I wrote down Guinan will be in 29 episodes and 2 films. Plus she's going to be in Picard season 2, so...
something seemed a little awkward during that, but other than that,
I thought it was very odd that the first time we saw her, like the camera comes in, we see Whoopi, and I'm like, Whoopi! And at this point, everybody knew Whoopi was. She was super popular. She's on the show because
my note was actually Whoopi.
That's mine too. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, she had reached out to Gene Roddenberry and said, "I'm a fan. Can you find a place for me?" And she was, like I said, she was doing Sister Act and everything around this era. She was big. Mm-hmm. Maybe this wasn't quite Sister Act yet, but she had done a bunch of movies. And the first time we see her face, and she just says Captain, and then points, and that's it. And then we move on. And obviously we come back and we get more Whoopi later in the episode. But for somebody who's like super excited Whoopi's joining or didn't know she was joining and then see her and gets all excited, that was such an understated second introduction.
And I think in my mind she came in later. I didn't realize she came in this early. And in my mind it was like...
Same here.
She came in, I mean, I know she was already somebody before this. She had her one-woman show, among other things, and was, a great entertainer. But in my mind, it was, this big celebrity's on the show now. But that's obviously not the way it actually happened. And watching it, I was like, I love her. I mean, I've always liked Whoopi anyway.
Yeah.
But I really like her. I like the character. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've always liked her, but I think this is one of her best roles. Like, I think she's particularly good as Guinan. She pulls off that old alien wisdom thing very well. And mysterious, but also listening. Yeah, was it this episode? No, where she's talking to Wesley? Yeah.
Yes.
Where he says, everyone's very curious about you, which was super meta because, again, people were excited Whoopi was on the show and they wanted to know more about her. But I thought that was interesting how she's like, no, I talk about myself. I'm not mysterious, but she's mysterious. It's that bartender. Everybody feels like they get to know her without actually knowing her.
I forgot to I put like one of my notes at the end that I forgot to point out or write down for myself, which was about the opening theme music. It seemed like it was updated. And,
I think it was.
Like the whooshing sound effects, were those new? Something felt...
I'm not sure if they were new or not, but yeah.
Something felt more pronounced.
Updated it. Picard forgot Pulaski's name when he was looking for the doctor, and man, he jumped to conclusions quick. Like, you're the captain of the flagship. You think you picked your doctor, or at least got somebody with enough renown that you wouldn't first forget her name, and then immediately jump to the conclusion that she's getting drunk instead of going on duty.
I thought that entire section was weird to me.
Yeah.
I didn't understand why he wouldn't know her name. I thought they were setting up he's preoccupied or something, or is the idea just that he's so bummed that Crusher isn't there that he's annoyed that...
I think it was just they wanted to repeat the name of the new doctor for every audience, but it did feel odd that he of all people should forget it.
It does seem weird. And again, without any other justification of I'm distracted, I'm this or that. So...
Yep. So then we get to Troi getting pregnant from the light. Did you like the whole perspective of the light as it went through the ship and everything?
I liked it. I mean...
I wrote, is Tinkerbell chasing them? And I immediately, of course, went to, oh God, is this some kind of godlike force? Hopefully there won't be any episodes about that this season.
But probably. I don't know if you've ever made it through a whole season of Star Trek without doing that.
Nope. I don't know if we made it through 10 episodes of Star Trek. But that scene is him going through the ship. I did think it was cool. Seeing some other parts of the ship or whatever, and then he gets to Troy's room, and it's pretty dirty.
It is.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Like it's disorganized, or you're saying that the scene was filthy because of
Yeah, he goes
Sexual.
under the covers, and when she gets up, she's sweaty and.
For a second, it looked like she was like orgasming before they switched it to what it was.
Exactly, which leads to some other questions I have, but I think we can get into that when we get into the broader discussion of what happened to her. But maybe we'll get to that real soon. But yeah,
not to be indelicate.
I love that line. And I love the word indelicate. That's a great word.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had apprehensions at first about the Tinkerbell, but I did think that part was cool, and I was happy. I was actually happy that, and this gets into the whole broader subject we'll talk about. Oddly enough, I was happier that she was pregnant and not possessed by some alien.
Oh yeah, certainly. This is at least a little. It's more novel. It is something you don't really see every time you do something like this.
Mm-hmm.
The alien essentially, or alien, does he impregnate himself in her?
Well, so alien used her DNA because they said the baby's half human, half Beta Z, which
that's right.
Troi is. So it's not like a quarter Beta Z as you would think if she mated with a human or something. And they mentioned it being very genetically similar to her, but it was. I think it was just trying to experience humanity, and
which I thought that's much more interesting. I thought that was great, and the fact that he's like, "All right, I got what I needed. I'm hurting you guys. I need to go." Again,
definitely.
And that's a really great choice for an advanced being to do. But there is still the question. Like, I guess he didn't have sex with her.
Not exactly.
There was no. This is another one of those. Like, why didn't you just ask? You know, and TNG's dealt with that question not just in this specific consent issue, but other beings being like, "Well, why didn't you ask?" It's like, well, you might have said no, and maybe that's why. Actually, that probably is why.
Oh, yeah. Or maybe it didn't understand the need to do that until it had the experience, and that's why it was like, you know what, I think I've overstayed my welcome here.
That's true too. True too. Because I thought Troi should have felt violated, but she didn't seem to.
I think it was a combination of the alien influencing her and also her being able to actually understand the alien and what it was getting at. Yeah, rather than, because if it was any other crew person, absolutely, I think the violation would have been the main part of it. But I think with her, because she can feel and has that insight that other people don't have, that's how that you would explain that away.
That makes sense.
I will say it was far less excusable when we get her into the conference room with everybody and the men are just discussing whether she's going to abort the baby or not without her inputting at all.
And I thought it was a really good choice to have it like she's kind of zoning out and those voices are coming from, the outside. I wrote down, this is like the state legislature talking about women's bodies.
Yes.
In this instance, our state legislatures are like, you're having to no matter what. In this instance, they're like, nope, we should probably do something about this.
Yeah, and she's like, nope, I'm having it. So it was almost the reverse.
Yeah. And I thought it made sense it didn't make sense for them to not include her. It made sense for them to be like, we don't know what's going on. This thing could be an invading force or whatever. That part made sense. But not having her be part of the conversation.
Yeah, I think that came about because she was just distracted, really. But I thought they tied that up very neatly when they had the card just say, well, that's that. She weighed in. She said, this is what's happening. He's like, yep. Your decision. We're done.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's great. The fact that they didn't consult her before, and she's quiet and whatever, but to me it just felt like they were concerned with the security of the ship and not taking into account the life part of it, which felt very tone deaf. And I feel like in the 24th century they should be a little more enlightened than that.
They should be.
Think they are. I don't think so. I mean, it's an invading alien that just showed up and took over her body. Wouldn't you? Right. I think you should be alarmed.
And I think
you can be alarmed, but it talked to her, not about her in front of her.
Well, she doesn't voice that, though, which would have helped. I think Worf, where he's coming from, makes sense. And then Riker is obviously like, wait a minute, what's going on? This is,
Well, because his first thought is, wait a second, it wasn't me, was it? I'm not ready to be a father.
I felt like that was his first reaction, which makes total sense.
I mean, it's not established they're sleeping together in season 1, but I think they were sleeping together in season 1.
I figured he was doing the math at that point. Like, okay, when's the last time?
Well, when the Imzadi, the only time in canon until they get back together that they were established to have been together, that was many years ago. So I don't think this is part of why I think they were definitely sleeping together again.
Well, I think to the indelicate line, which is like, not to be indelicate, who's the father is, wait a minute, who? Yeah, I mean, it's just like, even if you're just the ex-boyfriend or if they're still involved, either way, it's like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And he can ask that under the guise of, I'm just asking this on behalf of, for the ship, for safety. But, yep.
I will say, I thought Marina Sirtis absolutely killed it acting-wise in that conference room scene.
She did, and I thought her last scene, and it was weird. And I don't know if it's, maybe do you guys notice? I felt like her tears looked weird. Like, her tears didn't look weird. The streaks on her face looked weird.
I didn't catch it.
It's because she's Beta Z. No, I don't know.
Yeah, I was trying to decide if it was Beta Z or my HD or whatever. But yeah, I thought for the most part she did a really good job too. I thought so as well.
It was the most I've liked Troi so far in the series, and the most I've enjoyed Sirtis so far in the series.
Yeah.
Then, to continue the sexism of that conversation of talking about her without engaging her,
right.
Then she comes onto the bridge, like the next scene, like super pregnant.
That
and Picard and Riker both jump up very paternalistically.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it was supposed to be chivalrous, but to me it just came off as,
I was giving them the benefit of the doubt at that point. I was hoping that maybe it had something to do with maybe she's exuding some sort of influence. Maybe there's something more to that pregnancy than they realize, that kind of thing.
That's a good point. That could be.
She really did seem kind of zoned out in that first conversation. Like that there's some connect. I almost thought that connection wasn't just a conversation, but that was the fetus exerting some sort of hypnotic influence over her too.
The accelerated pregnancy, I think that's a concern as well. That would make sense that they're a little more concerned.
Sure. I don't know.
But no, I agree with the way that looked to me, that gesture.
Yeah.
The way they jumped up, and it seemed unnecessary. It seemed almost patronizing. They're like, oh, a lady, that kind of thing.
Well, to the point you've made, Jimmy Jerome, several times, which is there are a lot of families on the ship. So she's not the first pregnant woman walking around the Enterprise. So
true.
Probably the first on the bridge, though.
Possibly. Yeah, because they try to keep those people out of there.
Oh, man. Okay. I don't even have anything to follow that. That was a good one. That was a real good one. We got the 2-day pregnancy, which was interesting. And then we immediately get a 4-year-old. And when that 4-year-old boy turns to Picard, when Picard goes to check on her, and says, "Please don't worry, everything is okay." Was that about the creepiest thing in the entire episode? Like, if a 4-year-old boy tells me that, I'm going to be really super worried.
Well, we're going to have to start teaching Zoe some phrases to say to you at some point.
It definitely puts off a Damien the Omen kind of vibe, that's for sure.
Yeah, super. Woof.
I mean, cute kid, don't get me wrong, but yeah, right. I was with you, like, oh, uh-oh.
Then we got to the nursery and the puppy scene. Did you like that?
Oh, yeah.
That was kind of silly, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was a little distracted through some of those things, but what was I going to say? Oh, the whole creepiness of it. I think eventually that added to a lot of the appeal of how everything actually went, especially we already talked about this. We already jumped ahead. When the alien just went, I'm hurting you, got to go. They took away that thing you would normally expect to have happen there, where it's just this huge debate and struggle and consider, weighing this being's life against the rest of the ship and the universe and Troi's feelings, and it wasn't anything like that.
Yeah, I think we'll get to more of those types of questions next week. I think. I haven't watched the episode yet, of course. But weighing life and the meaning and value versus others.
And I feel like that decision that the child makes is similar. It's not exactly the same, but there's the one episode of the animated series, and this will be the last time we mention the animated series.
It won't be.
Where they're on the planet and there's a godlike being. I can't remember the rest of it, but essentially they're like,
Oh, yeah, the episode with the godlike being. I remember that.
you know the one. I just remember Nichelle Nichols voiced it, and she's essentially like, you know what? If you guys just leave, we're all good here. There's no need. We don't need to do some kind of test. I was like, thank you. So I thought this was very similar to that.
Yeah, no, I liked the way this was handled.
Yeah.
I did think there were a few things I didn't like. Like I said, I think the puppy scene was kind of dumb. I didn't like that he jumped to an 8-year-old, and then it got real weird there where he first jumped to an 8-year-old, and he didn't understand about his face being wet even though he could talk and know things, and then he also burned himself on purpose, and I get he was trying to experience life.
Right.
I thought it was uneven the way they portrayed that.
Yes.
And I thought it was very uneven the way they then kept him 8 years old for the rest of the episode. But on the other hand, I'm like, maybe that was the perfect age to get what he wanted to get out of it. So maybe he stopped aging.
You would have to wonder if he was in control of how fast he aged. And you'd also, I mean, for that speed, he might have, I think I believed that it's possible he wouldn't have had time to have cried yet.
Yeah.
Or understood the purpose of doing it necessarily.
But there were other things that he did that, I don't know, it just felt off to me that was the one thing he didn't know about. I don't know.
Does he say what is coming out of my eyes?
Or why is my face wet or something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
This will be the first of a couple Seinfeld references. Seinfeld he says the same thing essentially in the episode where I think it's Lori Loughlin actually, woman in the news lately, who was like, you won't get in touch with your feelings. So eventually he overdoes it, overcompensates.
Oh, right.
And he's talking to Elaine and he starts crying. He's like, what is this watery substance coming out of my eyes?
Oh, we gotta love Seinfeld.
I've got more Seinfeld coming up later, but I'll say that.
I did think when the alien left, it was very... Troi, it felt like an overreaction to me on Troy's part, but then I was trying to remind myself, look, she was super emotionally invested in this kid because it was in her and she's empathetic, and so I think that all played into it that made it a little more acceptable than if it was another crew person.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Getting to that, the child's departure and why it had to leave, and kind of exposed the reason for having this other plague thing happening in the background. It seemed like a little, how sometimes they have those competing storylines just sort of shoved in there, and they seem like they might be too big to go with each other.
Yep.
But it was, I noted it was obviously then a device to have a reason for this kid to go away.
Yeah.
Excuse me, gracefully, and have a way to demonstrate that. So
I wrote down plague. That's just what we need to watch right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
We also got another not quite new character this week, but somebody we hadn't seen in a while. O'Brien was back. Cole Meany.
Oh, yeah.
He was a lieutenant now, though, which bothered me because we learn later he's a non-commissioned officer and he's chief. But apparently in this episode, they decided he was a lieutenant. But now he was in 2 episodes of season 1. He was in the pilot, and then he was in Lonely Among Us. But now he'll be in the show a lot more often, and he takes over. It's funny, they establish in canon that he used to be a tactical or security officer before he became the Enterprise transporter chief, which I guess further backs up that it wasn't unusual for Yar to be running the transporter all the time.
Well, maybe his rank is like the star date, where it doesn't really quite mean anything from episode to episode.
No, he's non-commissioned officer, so he doesn't have that. Whatever.
Sorry, it's a little joke.
No, that's okay.
That reminds me of the running. There was something we had during the original series with the actor who was playing 2 different officers or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not necessarily the same O'Brien.
Oh, right.
Yes. It is the same O'Brien, because we learned that later. And in fact, in All Good Things, the final episode of the series, they flash back to the pilot, and O'Brien's in it again, reprising that, yes, that was him in the there and all that.
That's awesome.
And because O'Brien's a lead character in Deep Space Nine after he does dozens of episodes of TNG, we've learned a lot about him. If he had an identical twin brother, I think that would have come up. Unlike the other guy who never got developed. O'Brien gets developed plenty. But I really liked the shots of his hands on the transporters. I thought he did it with such a flourish and seemed so expert already. I don't know, it impressed me. That he just seemed very competent with the transporter.
That's probably why they asked him back.
One thing I thought was weird was when Wesley's talking to Guinan and he gets called to the bridge. He starts to go, and then he comes back, and he has a little bit more conversation with Guinan, very calm. And I felt like that was part of this episode too. The one negative about this episode is the urgency was not consistent.
Oh, yeah.
Which is something we've definitely complained about before in Star Trek, but it felt particularly a problem this week.
Well, I think that the whole plague backdrop, it's something I hadn't thought about as well. For a device, it makes sense. You need to have something that is sufficiently urgent to cause this being to understand the need to leave and just do this honorable thing. But at the same time, they picked something that was a little too big. This thing that they had to make it so that they couldn't jettison it. They couldn't solve it any other way than to get rid of the source of its growth. But at the same time, this thing, it sounded like it was going to kill the crew, the universe, just keep going. So I guess my point is, it's hard to also have other normal interactions going on in the ship for other reasons and still consider the urgency that you can't get your head around it, apart from that. If that makes any sense.
It does. My last notes have to do, we should mention that Troi named the child Ian. I think that's important, I believe. But isn't Ian Troy's father's name?
I think she says that, didn't she say?
She did. She said something about her father's name, but I hadn't caught exactly the full name that she used and why that would translate to Ian, but it sounded like it was longer than that.
Yeah, Ian Andrew Troi, human male, born in London, Earth.
Yep.
That's her father. I don't know that we ever, no, it looks like there's a picture, so we must see him at some point.
Okay.
But I don't recall ever seeing him in the series. Oh, I'm looking. It looks like we will see Ian in a flashback. We'll see him in Lwaxana Troi's memory. So I believe Troi's father's dead at this point. So it makes sense to name her son after him.
I like that. I think I can't remember I think Picard was taking over for Riker. They were doing a shift change essentially at 0300, which to me seems like a weird time to switch 0300, but. Again, as I've said, I don't know what the hell time that would be in space.
3 a.m.
Yeah, well, would it feel like 3 a.m. to us?
Probably not. I'm sure that the designations are arbitrary as far as. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, once you're out in space, whatever. It's just you sleep when you're supposed to sleep, and just whatever it happens to be. I would imagine. It's not like they have to worry about. Like when the bars close or when the stores are open, things like that. Getting to the bank.
10 forward is 24/7 though, right?
Well, that's why they call it 10 forward.
It's called 10 forward because it's the forwardmost part of the 10th floor of the ship.
Oh, not like 10-4 good buddy.
No.
Okay. Not like a truck stop. I thought also something else, and maybe this has happened before, but so Picard's sitting there in his captain's chair. He doesn't touch anything. He just yells, "Sick bay." And they're like, "Yeah, Captain." And I just thought, essentially, that ship is rife with the issues we've had doing this podcast, even where we mentioned Alexa, and Alexa starts talking to us. So how often would somebody be like, "Yeah, I was down on sick bay the other day." "Yeah, what do you need, Ensign?" "What?" "You said sick bay. What do you need?" "Oh, no, I was just talking about the other day when I was down in sick bay."
Remind me to talk about that for the next week's episode, because I do mention something about the technology, and I think that would also be kind of relevant.
The funny thing is, I was supposed to be in engineering. Engineering here, what do you need? So I'm not sure how that technology works exactly. Maybe it only works for the captain. But even then, he could have a conversation where it might inadvertently get picked up. But maybe he has to be careful of it, just like we have to be careful of saying Alexa or Google around our Alexa and Google devices. So.
Yeah. That's true.
We have a great guest star in this episode, and whose name I don't remember. I remember the actor's name, Seymour Cassel.
Yes.
Academy Award nominated for John Cassavetes' film he did back in the 60s. I know him better from his Royal Tenenbaum, from his Wes Anderson movies. Did several of those before his death. Did a lot of great work. Did a lot of character actor stuff. So seeing him was kind of a cool surprise. Seeing him in a Trek uniform was like, that's weird. And the weirdest part for me was, and I thought he was fine in the episode. I thought he was good. So if you guys both seen Royal Tenenbaums, right?
Yeah.
And he's in Rushmore and Life Aquatic. So he's
strangely recently, actually.
In
Wes Anderson's
Tenenbaums,
group.
I think it's Tenenbaums. Yeah, he pretends he's a doctor.
Yeah.
I think it's Tenenbaums, right? Yeah, because he's Royal's buddy or whatever. He pretends to be a doctor. So every time he gave a prognosis or whatever in this episode, it was like, well, we got to do this. I was always like, he's lying. He's just making it up. Because all I could think about was his character in Royal Tenenbaums. But I did enjoy it. I loved him. Rest in peace. He was great. So it was cool to see him.
Yeah, he died just about a year ago as we record this. So he hasn't been gone long. 84 years old. Yeah, I didn't have any notes about him because his plot was not, like, his part of the story wasn't at all important.
No.
But you're right, I enjoyed him. I wish they'd used him in a way that was more meaningful.
And I thought they were when I first saw him. Like, oh, he's going to be all over this. Like, nope, he's just hanging out with his little electronic football device there. Getting back to the pregnancy briefly, and I guess this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is, as you said before, there's families on the ship. So it makes sense there's a maternity ward. At first I was like, why is there a maternity ward on there? The other thing I thought was, have they made no advancements with how, babies, I guess there's no way to make an advancement with how babies come out, but
no.
As far as the room itself and everything, it was obviously it was weirdly shot because it's a syndicated show in the 80s, but it was weird. Didn't seem like a lot of privacy, even though, they were like, hey, you can stand over there, which I appreciated.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden Riker shows up out of the corner like, what's going on? I'm keeping an eye on this. So I thought that was kind of weird, but I just thought, just like, nope, baby's going to plop out. You're going to catch it. And we go. So maybe there was a lot of prep that we didn't see that was 24th century medicine.
Sure.
It seems like, and then they do say there was no pain. So I guess even the 24th century, sorry, ladies, childbirth is gonna still hurt a lot, which makes sense. You're squeezing a bowling ball through a very tiny opening.
Yeah.
That kind of relates to the Breaking Bad thing that I mentioned in the group chat at one point.
Mm-hmm.
They were the discussion they were having was about transporter technology, and they touched on some of the things that we've theorized before. And makes me wonder if you could use a transporter to take a baby out, for example. But that seems like it would probably be pretty dangerous.
I thought about that as well. I don't think you can, but that thought did cross my mind as we were watching this.
Could you put it back in?
Ha!
Oh my God.
Maybe a preemie, there'd be a reason.
Because, I mean, if you beamed aboard and you were pregnant and they kept all that information, and so I know I reject that. I don't care for that angle, that belief. But if that is true, then, or does it count as two separate beings? I don't know. I don't think the transporter technology would separate out. Maybe it would. I don't know.
So I don't remember if transporter's involved, but in Deep Space Nine, there is a baby that a woman who is pregnant with the baby is injured, and they take the baby out and put it in another woman to finish out the pregnancy.
Okay.
See, and it is lead characters, so I don't want to get into it. But yeah, like it's a whole season thing. Is this character is pregnant with this other woman's baby because she was injured, and they move the baby over.
So what was I was just thinking about like how that would work, and this is where things start to get a little. I start to get a little dubious about how things like that would operate because of the way that you would think that displacement would work, right? It's already strange enough because we talked about this in a past episode. If you beam somebody down to, let's say, like a foggy planet or something, it doesn't seem like they're actually moving the fog out of the way to, make the availability for the shape of the person being there. Right. So it's like they would have to like coalesce and like absorb the fog or something. So I can't imagine. So you could take a baby out, but if you try to put it back in after the space has started to collapse, what would that do?
And I can't remember what episode it is where McCoy mentions, what if they beam me down into solid rock? And I guess that would be a similar thing. It's like, you're right. Is he displacing the rock? Is it expanding?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Complicated.
But that is, that's part of a topic that might come up in the next episode, perhaps.
Huh. I did see one other thing while we were talking about guest stars here. Is RJ Williams, who played the 8-year-old Ian Andrew Troi,
Oh
has
yeah.
had a very successful career.
Oh really?
I knew it. He voiced Kid Cloudkicker in Tailspin
Huh.
for the run of that show, Disney's Tailspin. And now, more recently, he's been a producer on Young Hollywood and a bunch of other stuff up to recent. So he's got about 50 acting credits, and then he transitioned into a producer as well.
Wow. Good
Still
for him.
acting. The 4-year-old, doesn't seem to have, he has a handful of credits, but he doesn't seem to have lasted.
He's a no-talent hack.
Yeah, I could tell from that. Actually, I thought they did a really good job casting the 4-year-old to match the 8-year-old.
I thought so too.
So, we ready to get to the end here?
Yep.
Wesley.
I have a couple more silly things.
Oh,
maybe not silly.
sorry.
Maybe. So I have one more. Maybe these are both pregnancy ones, but I'm almost out. Shouldn't Riker have stayed to kind of be there for Troi?
It's not his baby.
I thought he could have been the bigger person, and stayed.
I think it was, when you work backwards, you can kind of see the math involved in the way that they're writing some of these things. So that was supposed to be a moment for Data and the Doctor to have that kind of, what? This machine cares? What? You want to hold this machine?
Yeah. I did like Troi defending Data in that scene.
Yeah.
That was really nice.
Yeah. I wrote this down and I don't remember what it referred to, and maybe because I wasn't sure, but I feel like when they're talking about the pregnancy, or it's around the time they're talking about how quickly the baby was born.
Mm-hmm.
They use the term eager beaver, which I thought was really dirty that they slipped that in there, so to speak. So
they beamed it in.
I have one more pre-ending note. This is not pregnancy related, but I think this is something. I think we've discussed this on mic, not just off mic, and maybe this is why I love Pulaski. She has the data conversation.
Oh,
I've been talking about for the entire first season here. I shouldn't say the entire, but here and there. So I very much enjoyed that, and that she still was like, "Okay, see you later, see you later, Data."
that was a good moment. And she was a total jerk, but I liked it.
I was just tickled that happened. So I enjoyed that very much. That's my last pre-ending note.
So the ending where Wesley decides to stay. I mean, I'm torn about that scene because on the one hand, it feels real awkward when they start out, like who will ensure his schooling and everything.
Oh, yeah.
But then it very clearly becomes like, hey, everybody, let's all gang up on the kid on the bridge, which on the one hand is kind of mean, but on the other hand is also like, hey, you're one of us now. And the Worf bit volunteering to tuck him in was just awesome.
That was the icing. No, I especially at that point, I was, I found it charming by then. It was a little strange at first, but that's the hallmark of a really good setup too. That kind of like, where's he going with this? Oh, you know.
Yeah.
I wrote that I thought, and it just came to me as I watched the ending and through my notes. It's a very, Wes Anderson usually at the end of the movies has this big shot of all the characters, and a lot of his movies are like, this is a weird family, whether it's an actual family or not a family, coming together. And I thought this episode, which obviously predates Wes Anderson by several years, but it was very much like, we're a weird, not weird is not the right word, but definitely we're not your normal family, but we're a family.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of going on there. And I thought I liked that. I thought the scene was awkward. I thought Wesley was awkward a lot in this episode, which is okay. But so the ending, I kind of feel like you guys. It was kind of like I liked a lot of it. Some of it felt weird.
I mean, I actually laughed out loud during that, which I found surprising. So I even had to make a note of that. That it was they reeled me in on that one, and especially the Worf line.
I mean, the Worf line made the rest of it worth it.
Yeah.
Whether the rest of it worked or not, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Alternate episodes.
So I had two. One was, as often is, essentially Troy's night with Tinkerbell, because I feel like we got a shortened version of that.
Oh no! I had to God, I was about to say absorb or take that in.
Ah.
That's not. No, I wasn't trying to do. That's not my fault. I stopped myself. That's why I was like, I can't say what I'm about to say because it's going to sound like. Anyway.
My other one was, and I think you guys both alluded to this a little bit, was I would have like to have been around Ian the whole time and seen his rapid development and seen more of him, how he developed from 0 to 8 in those however many hours. I thought that would have been interesting. I mean, I know we've seen aliens developing quickly and fish out of water kind of stuff, but I thought, especially the way it ended with it's like, I just want to see what this stuff's like. I thought that would have been interesting, especially when I think it would have given us more of Troi's, her attachment and everything at the end. And I realized that would have been an entirely different, we're talking entirely different episode, but I would have liked to have seen that.
I would have liked to have seen Dr. Crusher's leaving, personally. But aside from that, I'd say a good alternate episode for this.
I'm
sorry.
surprised we didn't ask, or that I didn't think to ask about this sooner. What was the reason for Dr. Crusher leaving in real life, or the actress?
Oh, she was just let go from the show. They didn't like her, and she didn't get along with the guy that ended up taking over the writer's room.
Aha!
Who was a jerk and didn't last past the season. So I think that was a big part of it.
Yep.
To TNG's credit, they went and begged her back for season 3, and she was with the show for the rest of the series. So at least they had the self-awareness or whatever to realize they made a mistake and they needed to get her back.
Because I think Dinah Muldaur doesn't end up having a great time either, does she?
She did not enjoy her time on the series. No. She stayed a whole season, but never signed on as a lead character.
Yeah.
I don't think they offered it to her either. I think it was kind of a mutual parting of the ways at the end of season 2.
Yeah.
I think they wanted Crusher back. But my alternate episode was at the end. Dr. Pulaski goes back to her quarters, and she gets on her phone, and she calls her grandfather, and it's Leonard McCoy. Because she is just McCoy 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm almost 100% sure that's how they wrote the character is, let's bring back that McCoy Spock dynamic.
Well, and we know McCoy had a daughter, right?
Yes, he did have a daughter.
Yeah.
And Star Trek will just make up kids whenever they want for the story. So
brothers,
whether they be Kirk's son or Spock's half brother, or whatever feels. Sulu has a daughter this whole time. Whatever feels right.
Yep. The whole writer's room thing. I was going to remark, knowing what we know now about how things like that work. I mean, that's kind of telling. If you hear even that much about there being a problem, there could have been God only knows what actually happening there.
Yeah.
Influence that relationship. So
sure. So let's get to the rankings. This episode, in terms of its ranking for the season, I'm going to say I think it was the best episode so far this season.
I'm going to say it's the worst.
Yeah.
Okay. Keith, you want to split the difference?
I'm kind of lukewarm on it, so I'm going to have to go number 1. Or rather, I'm going to have to place it at number 1, not go anyway.
Yeah. What about Riker? Honestly, I think this was a good episode, and if it came late in season 1, I'd be inclined to rank it towards the top.
Yep.
I think it set a good precedent for this season.
Yeah, I liked it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Attractive, your crush of Star Trek, Steven?
So, and we start all over, right? Each season.
Yes.
So I was going to go with the nurse or the doctor's assistant. But she was unbilled, and no one can find who it was. At least
you can still go with her.
I could
extras before.
However, I was won over though while I was doing my research by Dawn Arneman, who played Ms. Gladstone. And she is on the episode The Cafe. That episode of Seinfeld where George tells his girlfriend at the time that he's a genius and she's like, oh, well, I'm a member of Mensa. I'll give you the test. And Elaine tries to take it for him, and she goes to Babu's Cafe, and the first time he gets spaghetti all over it, and she ends up getting like a 99. So then they try and do it again, and by then, spoiler, Dawn Arneman's character has figured it out, and she meets Elaine at the window. And she's like, I hope you do better this time. And she does. She gets a 180. So She is my choice for crush. And I thought she looked really good in this episode too. So.
She did. I'm going to go with her as well because I really don't think there was many options. I guess we could do Pulaski because she's not a lead. But I feel like she qualifies under the Chapel rule, or the Rand rule, that Pulaski and Guinan get discounted because they're such a presence in the series.
Yes.
Keith, who do you want? Who are you crushing on?
Probably the same, although I don't remember her at all.
I had to Google her. I had to Google her while Steven was talking.
I was honestly probably just looking down or something when she was on screen.
She ran the nursery.
I didn't notice.
She has kind of a Lauren Holly look to her in this episode too.
When I looked up her picture, I was like, "Oh yeah, she is attractive." Yeah. So I'll crush on her. Yeah. And then our annoyance factor on a scale of 1 to 10, how annoying was Wesley this week?
This might be one of my higher rankings. For whatever reason, as much as I love the scene with Whoopi, I didn't like him. I didn't like Wesley, and maybe I didn't like Will Wheaton. So I'm giving him a 5.
Woo.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. I enjoyed him except for when he took forever to get to the bridge when Picard called, which could be annoying, but could also be like, oh, he's exerting his, like, now he's one of the rest of them that don't just come running when Picard calls. I'm going to give him a 2 because I'm divided on whether that scene should make him annoying or not.
Fair enough.
For me, it was really just the close talking during that first scene that made me a little.
Oh, yeah.
But probably 2. I think some of it is the sticker shock of just how his delivery has matured, I guess, between the seasons. So
cool. So his average is a 3. Not bad at all. That's pretty low on the annoyance scale.
It's his lowest of the season.
It is. Who was your annoying character in this episode?
Oh, I thought I wrote this. It was going to be the alien, but then I ended up liking him. Come back to me.
Okay, Keith, you got one?
I can't think of anything. I mean, the alien is probably the best candidate. I mean, even though it certainly redeemed itself by the end. I don't know, maybe the puppy.
The puppies, okay.
You know what? I'll go with Seymour Cassel's character just because he was doing the, hey, we got a problem here. Well, what if we do this? Nope, that won't fix it. What if we do this? Not going to work.
So you're going with Lieutenant Commander Hester Delt.
I am, yeah.
Okay, I'm going with Picard because he forgot Pulaski's name and also because he allowed that conversation about Troi getting an abortion to just go on right in front of her without getting her input. For both of those reasons, I'm naming it Picard this week. I didn't think it was his best showing.
Yeah.
Next week, we're going to talk Where Silence Has Lease, the second episode, which according to IMDb is rated quite a bit higher than this one.
I'm going to give it...
This one didn't get a high rating.
I will say this without having seen it. Worst title of this season so far.
It feels like an original series title.
Very much.
Yeah, exactly. What the hell?
So the Hypnosis is the Enterprise encounters a mysterious void in space, and when they move in closer to investigate further, it envelops them and they can't get out. So get ready, get excited. They're going to fall through a hole in space. And we'll be back in 1 week to talk about it. On the next It's All Been Tracked Before. Until then, live long.
And prosper.
Yep. Don't have anything right now. And you start thinking...
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?